But I'm now pleased to invite our virtual address from Dr. Imme Scholz. Imme is the co-chair of the independent group of scientists nominated by the Secretary General to write the Global Sustainable Development Report, which has been mentioned already and will be launched in September of 2023. And before continuing to introduce Imme, I just wanted to also recognize the International Science Council and their support in the peer review of the GSDR, which took place earlier in the year. And I think there were some 150 different peer reviewers from all across the natural, social, sciences, humanities, youth. So that was extremely helpful to the scientists who are drafting the report. In addition to being the co-chair of the independent group of scientists, Imme Scholz is the co-president of the Heinrich Böll Foundation and former deputy director of the German Development Institute. She's an honorary professor at the Center for Ethics and Responsibility at Hochschule Bonn-Ronsheig. Imme joined the DIE as a researcher when she was working on trade regulations for environmental requirements for products and production processes, including the sustainability of the timber trade in the Brazilian Amazon region. And she's then been an environmental policy advisor in the Amazon region of Brazil on behalf of the German Development Cooperation, and as a part of a large pilot project for the protection of Brazilian rainforests. On her return to DIE, she took over the newly founded environmental department, where she created a research group on adaptation to climate change. And in 2009, she was appointed as deputy director of the institute. Imme is very active in the science policy interface, and so I'm very pleased to turn the floor over to you, Dr. Scholz, for a virtual address. Thank you.
Okay, so I was listening into the end of your panel debate, and in the research institute, when I led it, we also tried to engage with open access, open science. And I think that listening to you, I realized it's a real fundamental transformation of the system to gather data, have access to data, write and publish. And I think it's extremely important for the sustainability transformations we are working on in the IGS, in the independent group of scientists, for making these transformations happen. In our work, we are 15 scientists from all continents and from very different, most of us are at universities, but not all of us. And having access to published works was an issue we discussed in the beginning of our work. You will remember that, Astra. So I think that the task you are committed to here is really very central for any attempt to implement sustainability transformations. We started our work with looking at where we are with implementing the SDGs, and what we see is that we see that progress is slowing down. We have reversals. We have persistent negative trends. This is due to the multiple crises we're facing at the moment, and we're facing since 2 or 3 years. But we also think that it is due to the nature of transformation processes as such, and that is the core part of our report, where we try to explain that transformation does not only include the emergence, acceleration, and stabilization of new innovations, of new trajectories, of new patterns of production, consumption, and behavior, but also the destabilization, breakdown, and phase out of unsustainable trajectories and pathways, which obviously creates a lot of resistance by interest groups, for example. But it also, if you picture transformation like that, it makes clear the crucial role science plays in this context. And I would like to highlight 2 points, maybe, or 3. One is we realize that transformations always are a context-specific process and therefore requires context-specific knowledge. And the engagement of local actors and the cooperation among scientists, committed scientists, I would say, among local and other policymakers, civil society, and citizens, the community as such, which is interested in these transformation processes. And that is the second point we make in the report. That's, we think the knowledge which is needed for transformations is socially robust knowledge. So it's knowledge which, like in transformation labs, is developed together with those who want the change, who have to go through the transformation process, adapt and adjust their own ways of doing things. But it can also, the solutions which are devised can also be tested and therefore show whether they are robust, whether they survive in practice or not. And this requires, that maybe is the third point, this requires to change also the way we train scientists, the way we train researchers, and the way we envisage the work which needs to be done. This is not to say that all science has to be committed and engaged in practical transformation processes, but certainly a good part of science needs to commit to these processes of transformation. Now, the impediments to change are not only those I mentioned, which are intrinsic to the transformation process as such, but also, you are aware of that, the unequal, the large inequality between science and innovation systems across the world. So we have calculated that, or UNESCO has calculated that 70% of all humans are living in countries with very weak systems of science, and that is a limit to the innovation capacity and a limit to mobilizing the knowledge needed for transforming. And so this inequality is a big task to be dealt with by more cooperation, also more investment in science systems, in education systems in each country. But we think that open science can be a very big and important contribution to closing that gap. And I'm from listening to you, I realize that this is something you must have been discussing, obviously, the whole week. But the last point I would like to make is the issue of trust and integrity of the science systems. This is something we also discussed quite a lot as the COVID pandemic has shown how fragile trust in science is. In my country, in Germany, we have like 30% of persons who do not trust the health system, who do not trust vaccines. Some of them even think it's all a hoax. The virus doesn't exist, and that is very worrying. And therefore, we think we have been also elaborating on what the science system can do itself to increase and protect trust and integrity. Because that is the basis for any science policy interface to work productively, but also what society needs to do or what type of regulation we would need. And in that sense, we think that it is very important to have these fact-checking initiatives that help people understand where facts are actually the basis of an assertion and where not. But we also think that it would be good, we echo the UN's General Secretary's pledge or plea for a global code of conduct on the integrity of public information. I think this is something every scientist should be very interested in, so that it is clear what the evidence is for public debates and for public decision making and for public policies and law projects. So, as a concluding remark, because I think I've been talking for long now, I would like to stress that when we think of what unites us in the SDG or in the sustainability community, in the sustainability research community, but also beyond, I think it's working for the global common good. This is the horizon we share. This is the understanding that science is often ethically, many scientists see themselves committed to work, to contribute also to positive developments in society with the knowledge they have been able to produce. And so in that sense, I think that the 2030 Agenda also provides a good framework and horizon for engagement of scientists once, because we know that producing science, applying it, always needs to revision new questions. And this process of constant scientific production and engagement with society is what we absolutely depend on for making the 2030 Agenda a reality. And I thank you very much for engaging so much in securing open science and open access and making the knowledge treasure available for this task. Thank you.
Thank you, Imme, for those really, I think, great remarks to wrap up the conference. And I don't think you were here at the beginning, but we had Jeffrey Sachs open the session this morning, and he opened referring to the public good and science as a public good. And so it was nice that it sort of circled back to that same statement to reinforce the importance of access to knowledge, open access, not just in and of itself, but to support the achievement of wider access to public goods and the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. So thank you so much for participating today, and thank you to all the speakers in the panels this afternoon. I think it was a really good final day for the conference.